For more than a decade now, the world has been taught to see Xi Jinping as one of the most powerful men alive. But if you stop looking at China from the outside and instead look inward at how Xi governs his own people, a very different picture begins to emerge. A picture not of confidence, but of fear. Because strong leaders don't usually spend this much energy watching, censoring, detaining, silencing, and purging their own society.
China's President Xi Jinping has purged his closest military ally.
Xi Jinping became president of China in 2012. At first, he played the role perfectly. He launched what many called a charm offensive. Xi spoke about national revival and dignity. He popularized the idea of the Chinese dream, a vision of prosperity, unity, and strength. He visited rural villages, shook hands with factory workers, ate simple meals in public, and presented himself as a leader close to the people. He was even nicknamed as Papa Xi. But behind the smiles and slogans, something else was already underway. Almost immediately after taking power, Xi began consolidating control inside the Chinese Communist Party. What was officially framed as an anti-corruption campaign quickly turned into something far more aggressive and far more personal. Senior officials were arrested. Provincial leaders vanished from public view, military commanders were removed, party fractions were dismantled one by one. The scale was unprecedented. Never before had so many high-ranking officials been targeted so quickly. No rank was untouchable, no network was safe. The message was unmistakable. No one is safe except me. This was a historic break from how China had governed itself since Mao Zedong. After Mao's death, the Communist Party made a quiet but critical decision. Never again allow so much power to sit in one man's hands. Leadership would be collective, decisions would be shared, term limits would exist, succession would be predictable. Xi dismantled that system piece by piece. He absorbed power across every major institution: the party, the military, the economy, ideology, and the law. His political philosophy was written directly into China's constitution. Term limits were removed entirely, and by the late 2010s, Xi Jinping had accumulated more formal power than any Chinese leader since Mao. And yet, instead of relaxing his grip, he tightened it. That is where the fear becomes visible. China today is one of the most heavily surveilled societies in human history. In fact, estimates have it that there are about 600 million surveillance cameras, and that is roughly one for every 2 citizens. Millions of CCTV cameras blanket cities, train stations, schools, and neighborhoods. Facial recognition systems can identify individuals in seconds. Phones transmit location data, payment apps log behavior, and all credit card purchases are logged into government data that can locate where someone is. On the roads, there are cameras for every kilometer of distance. These cameras can instantly scan a license plate of car to reveal all details about its owner. This surveillance is not reactive, it is predictive. The goal is not simply to punish dissent, it is to detect unrest before it exists. To stop anger from organizing, to stop frustration from spreading, to stop ideas before they become movements. Online, the control is even more suffocating. Foreign platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube do not work in China. In fact, for every foreign app, China has their own local version. WeChat for WhatsApp and Facebook. Douyin for TikTok, Weibo for Twitter, Bilibili for YouTube, among others. In these platforms, search terms disappear in real time. Posts are deleted seconds after being published, entire discussions vanish overnight. Even private messages can trigger investigations. The system doesn't need to arrest everyone, it only needs to remind everyone that it can. The message is simple and relentless. You're being watched and you should behave accordingly. Xi's insecurity extends even to humor. At one point, comparisons between Xi Jinping and Winnie the Pooh began circulating online. Simple memes, lighthearted jokes, nothing political, nothing organized. The response was immediate: censorship. Images of Winnie the Pooh were removed from Chinese internet spaces, references were blocked, even indirect mentions became sensitive. This wasn't about a cartoon bear, it was about control over image. Because when legitimacy feels strong, jokes don't matter. But when legitimacy feels fragile, even laughter becomes dangerous. Then there are the detention camps. In China's western region of Xinjiang, more than 1 million Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities have been detained in what the government calls re-education centers. Officially, these facilities exist to combat extremism. In practice, they function as instruments of mass control. People are detained without trial, families are separated, religious practices are restricted or criminalized. Language, culture, and identity are treated as threats. This is not counter-terrorism, it is social engineering on an industrial scale. A confident leader does not usually need camps this large. A confident leader does not fear language, prayer, or tradition. That same fear becomes unmistakable when you look at Hong Kong. When Hong Kong returned to Chinese sovereignty, it was promised autonomy. 1 century, 2 systems, freedom of speech, independent courts, political rights. For years, that arrangement held until people began demanding more. Millions took to the streets, not with weapons, not with militias, but with signs, chants, and umbrellas. Xi's response was not negotiation, it was force. A sweeping national security law crushed dissent almost overnight. Activists were arrested, media outlets were shut down, opposition figures were jailed or driven into exile. Elections were redesigned to guarantee loyalty. Hong Kong was absorbed, not gradually but decisively. A secure leader might have tolerated dissent, Xi could not. Taiwan presents an even deeper anxiety. For Xi Jinping, Taiwan is not just a territorial issue, it is an existential one. As long as Taiwan exists as a free, self-governing Chinese society, it represents an alternative model, a living contradiction to the Communist Party's claim that control is necessary for stability. Xi's increasingly aggressive rhetoric toward Taiwan is often framed as strength, but it can also be read as insecurity, because reunification under his rule is not guaranteed, and failure would be humiliating. Every speech, every military exercise, every warning raises the stakes, not just for China, but for Xi personally. The louder he speaks, the more pressure he places on himself. Then there is the question of succession. For decades, the Communist Party carefully managed leadership transitions. Power changed hands predictably, stability was protected. Xi has erased that tradition. There's no clear successor, no groomed heir, no visible exit strategy. Why? Because naming a successor means accepting replacement. It means acknowledging that power is temporary, and Xi appears unwilling to do that. In recent years, this insecurity has spilled into the military. Senior journals have been purged, defense officials have disappeared from public view, commanders of China's rocket forces, responsible for nuclear weapons, have been removed. Loyalty investigations have intensified. This is not routine discipline, it is fear of betrayal. At one point, Xi reportedly joked with Vladimir Putin about organ transplants and humans living to 150 years. On the surface, it sounded like dark humor. Underneath, it revealed something else. An obsession with survival, with longevity, with staying in control for as long as possible. And that brings us to the real question. Is Xi Jinping simply greedy for power, or is he terrified of losing it? History offers a warning. The most dangerous leaders are often not the most confident, but the most afraid. Afraid of dissent, afraid of exposure, afraid of their own people. Xi may command the world's second largest economy, he may control one of the most powerful states on Earth, he may shape global trade, technology, and geopolitics, but at home, his actions tell a different story.